welcome. And first, congratulations for having found the room. It's kind of a challenge, so I think we should all be proud of this. So my name is Romain Muller. It's my pleasure to be hosting this session this afternoon, just after the lunch break, so we keep a good energy level together on how to get EU funding for your deep tech startup. So I'm joined with three distinguished panelists that will present along the way. And our objective today is really to get you in the world, and thanks to three insider views on two instruments that are linked to the European Framework Program for Research and Innovation, which is called Horizon Europe. So instead of having you reading pages and pages of regulations and guidelines, what you're going to experience today is really live from those who have been on the floor experiencing how it takes to not only make it happen, for Switzerland to be part of Horizon Europe and being able to, for you to be able to submit proposals to get funding, and also those who have been evaluating proposals and those who have been really also shaping the investment around those proposals. So we really want this to be informative, engaging, stimulating, so we count on you also at some point. The time is short, but we definitely will have also some places for questions. So first, to start with, just to kind of put it into the context, I want to present you EU research. So this is actually a network across Switzerland, which is funded by SERI on a non-profit basis and offering free of charge services, so that actually Swiss entities can have all the information, the advice that they need to be successful in submitting proposals to get EU funding. So here we're talking about public funding from the European Union, and you will hear shortly how it has been made possible that this is the case. So as I said, we inform, we advise, and we connect. So come to us if you have any question of any sort. We are a team across Switzerland. We have offices next to where you're located. And we also have an office here in Bern, which is a network office, where we also deal with the connection with Brussels. So we get first-hand information from Brussels, then we are very happy to share with trainings and with sessions like this one as well. So it's really an open door, and feel welcome to address us anytime you feel like you need information or you want to have more chances actually to get funded through these programs. That's it on my side on this one. So just to check that we're going to have sharing of experience from our three panelists. We're going to keep the Q&A, the question and answers for the end. And just to start with a bit of warming up after the lunch, just a show of hands. So who is from the startup community? Cool, nice. Who is from the investor community? Oh, nice, cool. And who is, I don't know, I put that under service providers community, or those who are supporting the network? Okay, we'll be part of it. And then the question, which is a bit the moment of truth for us, who has ever heard about Horizon Europe? Oh, cool. And who has heard about the EIC Accelerator? Wow. And most difficult, EIC Step Scale Up? Ah, yes, okay. So you're here to learn a bit more. That's great. So without any further ado, we're going to go into the first angle that we wanted to give you is really the political angle. And how is it possible today for a Swiss organization to be able to submit proposals as part of Horizon Europe, and in particular for EIC Accelerator and also EIC Step Scale Up? So it's my pleasure to introduce you to Otto Brun. So Otto is a scientific advisor for international innovation programs at SERI. He's responsible for the Swiss participation in the EIC Accelerator. It's a good place to be, as well as international digital technology programs. He was formerly an entrepreneur, co-founder, and board member in several startups and SMEs. He's also served as chairman of the management committee for UAS for Europe, the Association of European University of Applied Science, and was deputy head of office at Swisscore, the Swiss liaison office to the European Union for Education, Research and Innovation, before joining SERI in 2023. And so the first question to you, Otto, is why has the Swiss government made so much effort, and you were really frontline in this, for Swiss startups and SMEs to be able to enter in those programs, which are namely EIC Accelerator and EIC Step Scale Up, on offering to Swiss startup and SME the possibility to scale up in this European funding scheme?
Yeah, thanks, Romain, for that question, and thank you all for joining us here today. I think, in one word, the answer is money. There's a lot of money in the EIC Accelerator. But to develop a bit more on that, I think it's really reconnecting to the European ecosystem, reconnecting to the European startup ecosystem, reconnecting to the European investment ecosystem for innovation. Because the EIC has this kind of platform quality in kind of agglomerating both the startup community, so you can see who you're competing in, the status of where the technology is, see where you stand compared to your European peers, and agglomerating the investors from across Europe who give you access, expertise to the different markets. So I think that part is extremely important, replugging into the European ecosystem. Another thing is the way the money is structured and for whom it's made. So it's really focused on deep tech, which for Switzerland is, one of our greatest strengths, and it's focused on the specific market gap of scale-up funding, growth funding, A rounds, and now with the step scale-up call, B rounds and C rounds. So it's rounds if you're looking for between 10, 20 million, or if you're looking at a round up to 150 million. This is where the EIC Accelerator and the step scale-up call can now address your needs. And that, at the European level, was really a gap they wanted to fill. And in Switzerland, we really have the same. I mean, when I speak to the community, that's really where the gaps are. That's really where we need to fill that. And then thirdly, it's blended finance. At least for the A round, so those rounds of 10 to 20 million, there is the non-dilutive funding up to 2.5 million, which de-risks your technology, so important for deep tech. And then on top of that, they try to catalyze larger rounds. So they'll provide a portion of that A round and thereby catalyze bringing in private investors alongside. So it's the direct funding they provide, the non-dilutive funding, the dilutive funding, and then catalyzing this external funding.
Thank you for this. And also, can you let us know what was the genesis, how those two instruments were born, just to understand a bit more their DNAs?
Yeah, so it was started in 2016. It was first launched when you started to see these slide presentations around Brussels, where basically you saw the size of the American tech ecosystem with, now they're called the Mag 7. There were different acronyms back in the day. But, these huge companies that are now worth trillions. You had the Chinese ecosystem with, the big Baidus, Huawei's, and so on, Alibaba's. And then you had the European ecosystem where, the biggest bubble you could see was Spotify or something. So there was this real sense of urgency. We need to be able to compete and create champions. Not only to create champions for strategic reasons, but really create champions so that you can motivate the rest of the ecosystem, examples for the others. And more than an example, it's also just to catalyze the investor interest. So when you speak to American institutional investors at the time, maybe still now, there was, they would wake up sweating, fearing that they're missing out on the next Google, the next NVIDIA. Whereas in Europe, the institutional investors it's a fear of, getting into the wrong investment. So we want to create that American-style fear of missing out. So we want to create that FOMO. So the idea of the EIC was to really create these champions. So their KPIs are really how many unicorns are they creating, how much private capital are they bringing in.
Okay. Thank you for this. And you were in Brussels, so you also witnessed it from a first hand. And then the real question that everybody has on their lips, I guess, is is it really the case that Swiss organization can today submit to the EIC Accelerator and EIC Step Scale Up?
Yes, so the very important question, and the question is unequivocally yes. Okay. So if you read the news, you might hear that it's not quite finalized. We still need to sign the Horizon Europe agreement. But in particular for Horizon Europe, for all of Horizon Europe, including the EIC Accelerator, we have full access, really comparable to the European member states, as if we were associated for the whole period of 2025. So do apply. There are already some Swiss companies who are going through the process of evaluation from the cutoff in March. There's a cutoff coming up later this year. So really go ahead without hesitation. What we have in place for this year until the signature of the agreement, which is due to happen in November, it has to happen for the Europeans, so it's not something that we're asking for. It needs to happen in November. There's going to be the final signature of the Horizon Europe Association Agreement. That is the time at which we can start signing the grant agreements. So for the companies that go through the evaluation currently, I mean, it's not something you need to worry about for the next call, because then everything will be fully associated and officially associated. But for the companies going through the process now, they will have to wait until the 15th of November to sign their grant agreements for that non-dilutive funding. But that's the only kind of caveat, in just a slight delay in terms of the timing from the decision that they'll get funded to when the grant agreement will be funded.
And then is a transition question on this, is like, what's the level of ambition that you expect from Sarah's side? So
we were associated during Horizon 2020, which was the program before Horizon Europe up until 2020, so it's been in 2014 and 2020. They piloted the EIC between 2018 and 2020. The real pilot, where it really resembles what it is now, is 2019, 2020. And Switzerland was in the top 3 or top 4 in terms of performance. So there was, at the very top, France, Israel, Germany, and then Switzerland, ahead of the Netherlands, Sweden, other, top deep tech ecosystems. So our ambition is to get back up there. So over 2019, 2020, when the budget was smaller than it is now, we had 40 companies funded, about 100 million in terms of funding. So that's kind of the ambition we're looking for. 2025 companies getting funded a year. The budget is a bit less than $1 billion a year total between the EIC Accelerator and this kind of Series B style series step scale-up funding. So between the two of those, we're hoping to get a good chunk of the money.
So no pressure for those of you who are startups. That's part of the ambition that we have also all together, and that's why we're here. So thanks again, Otto, for answering these questions. And setting this level of ambition, of course, you need to know what to expect and also what the instruments, in this case, EIC Accelerator and the EIC Step Scale-Up, are expecting. So what are the type of startups and SMEs that they want to be part of the pipe, and down the line that they are successful, and as Otto was saying, also transform into unicorns. And that's why also now we have the pleasure to have with us Elisa Boschi. And you've been actually sitting right in the jury panel. So it's, as you will hear also, there are different steps. But the jury panel is really the time where you get, as a startups or SME, successful. It's almost close to the end of the process of being selected, but then you have to be in front of a jury. And thanks to Elisa, we'll understand more like what are the trade-offs, what are the different factors that are really kind of looked at this moment in time. And this will also give you a gist of what this instrument has been designed for. And this is why we're delighted to have Elisa with us. So Elisa, you're a board member, advisor, and jury member of the EIC Accelerator, as I mentioned. Yeah. You're also an angel investor on technology startups and member of the Swiss ICT Investor Club, SICTIC. You have also more than 20 years of experience in international technology companies such as Microsoft, Hitachi, and Swisscom. So you feel like home here, I guess. And you also held diverse leadership roles. You advised and supported also many international customers in achieving that that digital transformation and innovation objectives. So welcome on board. And the first question I have to you is, what does a deep tech startup and SME need to consider before applying to the EIC Accelerator?
So thank you very much, and thank you everyone for being here and showing this interest. I think the most important thing before considering applying, is actually remembering what the EIC Accelerator is looking for. So they are looking for startups that have a very innovative product, service, or business model with the potential of disrupting the market. So we're really looking for the next big thing, either create a new market or disrupt it, with a clear commitment to scale up, because this is where this funding comes in, and with looking for substantial funding that, because of the nature of the company, might bring certain substantial risk, and which might mean it's difficult to be funded by private investors alone. So the EAC Accelerator, and this kind of ties with what Otto said before, really is trying to carry part of that risk, help scaling up. This means there are some requirements that come with this. When we scale up, it means we also have already certain maturity level. So we talk about TRL, technology readiness level. We need to have a product that can be assessed. So there should be a testing in a realistic environment. We need to have a business plan. The company needs to be at a certain stage, and we're talking then about scaling up, becoming bigger. And in order to help this risky endeavor, this risky business to progress, there is also what is called blended finance. So in the EIC Accelerator, you could have a combination of three elements: a grant, equity, or both. And it's usually both, but it could be any of them. The idea is the grant helps you in achieving the next level of your product that you can then scale up with the equity. And we keep in mind it's a risky business. We talk about patient money. We know it will take some time before we get somewhere. So I think these are extremely important things to keep in mind, linked with the fact that your technology could be any. So the EAC Accelerator speaks about two calls. The open call, which means any technology that is disruptive enough, blah, blah, what I said before. The second is so-called challenges. So predefined areas, and these are the likes of generative AI. There are new mobility models, new materials space. So every year you have new challenges. The difference is they have two different budgets. So it might be easier getting funding if your startup aligns with the challenges, but if you have a disruptive technology, you can always refer to EAC Accelerator. It will always be a door open for you. Step Up is slightly different because it really focuses more on the next stage, really on scale up, do the next step. And the main difference there, I'd say it's three main differences to this. The gist of the idea is the same. But the areas that are touched on are strategic areas. You can't go open. You have a disruptive idea. It has to be either deep tech, clean tech, or biotech. If you fit in those three areas and you already have an initial investment, then you can go for the next scale-up level to the scale-up to the STEP program. So you have an investor, you fit in those areas, and we talk about a bigger chunk of money. Tickets are 10 to 30 million, but just equity. You don't have the component, we help you go in the next step with just a grant. There's no grant in Step Up.
Thank you
I think I try to be short, I don't know. But there are some relevant elements that I hope I mentioned.
Definitely. Thanks for this. And the next question, so I was saying that you're part of the jury member, so this is a very exciting moment when you're selected and you reach this stage.
Yeah.
And just also for you in the audience to really understand and sense, again, that's also the word we wanted to bring in. Like which mindset, if I'm selected and I'm in front of the jury and you are in the jury, which mindset do you expect me to have in this moment?
Well, the jury, and this applies to both programs, so I'll just talk generally about that. The jury is basically the last stage. The jury decides whether you get funding or not. So if you've managed to get to that point, you have managed to go through a first selection step, preparing your short proposal. Then You submitted a full proposal and you went past that too. And that proposal got reviewed by the external experts. And the whole documentation comes to the jury. The reviews of the experts, the external expert, come to the jury. We know the startups, we have seen the videos, we have read all the documentation, which is quite a lot, but believe me, we'll read it all. And when the startups come, they should have a double thinking in mind. First of all, they should be proud because they went already through quite a few steps. So it is just good companies that get to the final stage. You have achieved a lot. And then you need to take this really seriously because it's the moment in which a limited group of people will decide whether they want to invest in your company. So I know we talked about grant, we talk about R&D. This is funding. Think of it as a venture capital that decides whether you're getting this money or not. And this depends on whether they have trust that your business is a good business to make. So when you arrive, you will find a panel of people. So it's the 5, do you remember? It could be 4 or 6, but it's usually 5 people. And just these 5 people have decision rights. But in the same room, there is a representative for the European Investment Fund, so someone from the European Investment Bank, who cannot decide but can ask questions. So there will be someone that asks financial questions. And there will be the program manager, which is someone that has really deep understanding of the technology area your company is in. Again, cannot decide, but can ask questions. So you should expect, and then of course the EIC personnel who moderate the sessions, and sometimes there is someone looking in for process assurance and quality. So there are quite a few people. And many can ask questions. Just 5 decide. So you need to make sure that you can convince these people in all the different angles, technical but financial, strategical, your business planning, the team. You need to make sure that you can convince these people that your investment is a valid one, that there can be some return at a certain point in time. We accept the risk, but we want to believe there is some return at a certain point in time.
And who are these people? I mean, what's the profiles of those jury members?
It's people that have been really looked for doing this kind of job. So it's always someone that understands the technology. They never let in someone that wouldn't understand deep tech, if it's a deep tech. It's a deep tech panel, and specifically the technology that is touched on. But then there are, I would say, 3 main groups of people. The entrepreneurs that have funded companies on their own, have gone through the whole cycle, maybe even more than once. There are the investors. And there are industry people, so people that had leadership positions or relevant position in generally tech corporates. So you will find people that are able to really judge or decide on other aspects than just technology. And I would say it's just as important to judge the capability of the team, to be able to implement the strategy, to judge the strategy, to look at the financial numbers, because if those are not credible, it jeopardizes the investment. How can we suggest, how can we back up an investment if we are not comfortable with the numbers? So really, the jury is able to judge on all these different aspects.
Thank you. Thank you for this. And this is really what we wanted to share with you as well, is to really understand what's the end point. Like the jury is really the moment, as Elisa was saying, that the decision is taken. And it's quite unusual to have this kind of jury composition and this type of expectations also from a European project. So that's what we wanted to share with you. And you think that arriving to the jury and then being selected is the last point, but no, there is afterwards a part that already Otto and Elisa touched upon, which is really this investment part. So that's the beauty also of the ESC Accelerator, that we have this opportunity through this instrument. The startup has the opportunity to access equity coming from a public sources, which is quite unusual, with this leveraging effect and catalyzing effect for private funding. And we have the chance to have Diego with us, Diego Barguglia, who has actually been part of the investment round for some of the EIC beneficiaries. So he's been there. He's been discussing also with the European Investment Bank, so which is really the investment arm of the European institution. So those really striking the deal on the public money being put by the EIC fund into those startups and SMEs being selected. So Diego, you have more than 2 decades of venture capital experience, and you've developed a solid experience in creating, growing, and exiting ventures in therapeutics and medical devices. You're the chairman and non-executive director in EndoArt, acquired by Allergan, EndoSense, acquired by St. Jude, Picodrill, acquired by Asahi, NeoCutis, acquired by Merz, Amal, acquired by Boehringer Ingelheim, Sequena, IPO on Euronext, and board advisor to GenKyotex, IPO on Euronext. That's a challenge for any moderator. I think you did it on purpose, so you can ask any question afterwards if I didn't completely butcher the name. So before entering the VC industry, Diego, you served as a manager in several medical device and pharmaceutical companies. You are holding a Master of Science in Microbiology from the Biocenter of the University of Basel and a PhD in Molecular and Cellular Biology from the Swiss Institute for Experimental Cancer Research in Lausanne. First question to you would be, what is your experience as a VC, a private VC, working with the European Investment Bank, which is a public body?
Well, I think we had 3 experiences over 2 companies with EIB, EIC, and I would say they have been positive experience because we ended up to have money. So in good German, you say Geld stinkt nicht. And we got it, and we got it with 2 instruments, the grant one and the equity one. So for confidentiality reason, I cannot disclose maybe the name of the companies, that are very easy to find, but the amount was in double digits, amount for the equity part. I think significant money, but it was also that money that you know from the beginning that you are dealing with a public investor, not with a private investor. And there are pros and cons, there are some strings attached, which needs to be considered right from the beginning. And I think Elisa you did a very good summary. I think the condition and how you're looking at that investment of the 2 ways from a VC perspective, or let's say private VC investment or public market, are very, very similar. There is maybe 2 caveats on that. On the VC, you are more the emotional part, which pays. So the personal part. It's not that you are not looking at the person, but we are meeting the person. We do have skin in the game. I don't think that in Brussels you are entitled to carry it. We are. So we have skin in the game, and I think the notion of return, it's important also for the VC partner in the deal. Doesn't mean that we only do deals if we are convinced that we will do a huge amount of money. If it will be the case, I will not be here today, will be somewhere else. But this is an important part. The second part is that the decision-making process in a let's say in a private VC fund is not as well structured as in the European, or let's say with public, para-public funds. This is a masterpiece of regulation, it's a masterpiece of organization, it's very, very well done. I won't say that we, as a private VC, we are messy, we are not doing our own work, but we are interpreting the decision path in a slightly different way, which is the public fund. But I would say very good collaboration. There is another aspect which is it's important to consider when you are accessing this kind of fund, not only with the European Investment Council and Bank, but it's the notion of matching fund. So you may you get very often is up to 2.5 million as a grant, which is non-conditional, so you can get it. It's also dissociated from the equity part, but you are entitled to the equity, which might be from few million up to 15. I think 15 is the legal maximum that the EIC can commit.
It's 10.
10 now.
As of this year,
It's 10.
10
Okay.
now,
Yeah.
So we have been lucky because we went up to 15 in 2 cases.
So we know roughly.
But that amount is contingent to the fact that a new investor, naive investor to the company is coming and is pricing the deal. So basically, yes, you have accepting or you can have access to that money, but you have to find somebody else who is tagging along and setting the conditions. Just a kind, and I find this process very smart because it's a benchmark to the valuation of the deal you are entering.
Okay.
The conditions then, those are, I would say, usual conditions submitted to negotiation, and I think in the 3 experiences we had really very smart people on the other side of the table. Also, we have not exposed to the selection process, to the jury. We have been exposed to the ladies and gentlemen implementing the deal, but very savvy, very sophisticated investor, which ended up in a very collaborative and very positive experience.
Thank you for this. And are there any milestones or that you would like to share on the negotiation process with the EIB to keep in mind?
I think on that second part, once the jury has decided that company is eligible to, then I think there is not really milestone. So the milestone is really not to go in the pitfall to take that it takes forever to close the deal. Because also, of course, it takes time. The notion of matching that amount of fund might take time because you have to convince also other naive investors to the company. So this is something which you need to be prepared. I think, again, Elisa said very, very well what you need to do. From the company perspective, it's also important from the company perspective and from the co-investor in the deal, so being previous investor, to be educated on the process and to know what are the constraints, of especially that notion of matching fund, which is very important.
Yeah. And then will a company, in this case, get better condition with the EIC money than venture capital, private money?
I will be very blunt here. I think if you are a good CEO, you have good negotiation skills, then you might get good conditions, but not because of EIC. It's just purely negotiation. I must say we are very aligned with the deals we had. There is one aspect which is it's important and is to some extent difficult to accept from the company, but also from the investor, let's say, private investor in the company, is the aspect that the EIB or the EIC on the step, they have a provision in which they can force to the company, so they can sell their investment back for 1 franc. Okay, in case things are going sour, things are not going well, I fully understand that they are not willing to have on the balance sheet, how to say, toxic assets or assets which cannot be valorized. There is a put condition, say, we can sell whether that is the equity, the warrant elements back to the company, and the company is obliged to acquire for 1 franc. And this, it might looks a little bit strange on that because 1 franc is 0 value, but depending on the condition, it might have significant impact on the balance sheet of the company.
Yeah,
this needs to be considered right from the beginning.
Okay. Thanks a lot, the 3 of you, also for answering the question. And now it's time for a question and answer from the audience. Just for the sake of the recording, just wait for the mic so that also the mic get the recording, not only us hearing you. And thanks already for jumping in. Your turn. Yeah.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Enzo. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer of Anybotics. Very, very insightful session. Thanks a lot. I think beyond this being super interesting for, I think, younger companies or early stage scale-ups, I'd be curious, is there a certain upper limit where companies are not eligible for that funding or that scheme anymore? If you already had a certain level of funding or certain size of a company, or is that kind of open because deep tech remains difficult even if you're at a certain stage, so it's not over when you raised your Series A or your Series B. How is that looking?
Who wants to take it?
Go ahead.
So yes, there are limits. I would suggest to look at the documentation online to get all the details. But there is a limit in what is defined of being an SME in this context. So SMEs and startup are eligible, but there is a limit in the number of employees to 50, if I'm not wrong. There is.
It's 499.
No, it depends if it's a startup
SME, yeah.
or so there. Yes, there is a limit in the number of employees. The kind of company could be 250 or 499.
Yeah, exactly.
There are some limits also on the balance sheet, but it really depends. It might also change depending on the call. So the recommendation here is just to keep in mind, yes, there is a limit. Review the details, or probably your research could be another very good advice.
Yeah, maybe just to complement that also on top, there are those kind of limits, but also the funding amounts. So in this new step scale-up call, so this is the first year they're doing it. This might evolve next year, so it's worth keeping an eye on. But they've created this step scale-up call precisely because before they had this instrument, which was really A rounds, up to 15 million, and they felt a bit constrained because they wanted to be able to support really high potential companies also with more amounts of money. So the step scale-up call is between 10 to 30 million that they will put up, the EIC fund. Again, there's no non-dilutive element there. And then that's to catalyze investment rounds of between 50 to 150 million. So that gives you kind of the framework of what they're looking for. I don't know if antibiotics, your ambitions maybe go beyond that. But yeah, so it does appeal to more mature or bigger companies, but yeah, it's still that framework.
Thank you. And while the mic is passing,
compliment you, we are in negotiation now in a biotech company from a classical loan from the European Investment Bank, which is just in parallel and on the top of what we are discussing now. But this is really the European Investment Bank who is granting a loan. This is a non-equity instrument, but also with, and at least if I am not mistaken, there is no limits there. And there is no limits on the size of the company, nor on the amount which can be rent. Of course, you cannot go there and saying, I would like to have a kind of a debt structure or a loan of 100 million if your balance sheet calls for 5 million turnover.
Otto, you wanted to add something? Thanks, Diego.
Maybe I can add to that as well. So that's part of the InvestEU program. So that's not Horizon Europe. And we're not associated to that, which means that Swiss companies are eligible, but the activities that are being funded need to be happening within the European Union, which means, so for instance, if you need this loan to build a factory, that factory can't be located in Switzerland, but Swiss companies are eligible.
Yep. Thank you. There was another question. Two other questions, yeah. Thank you.
So, hi, this is Sahar from Prevision Medicine and Semperia. I have just one question in addition to the milestone question that you initiated. It was not clear to me when the jury accepted the project. Then normally this accelerator helping us to get somehow to market fit or being ready for scale up. And what is the milestone between the time that the jury accepted and we can apply for equity? It should be done in the same time, then we are not ready for scale up. So this equity is exactly in the same time of accelerator. Okay.
Yes. So when the jury decides, it decides both on the grant and on equity. When that decision is taken, you're eligible for the equity. Then it needs to be done. So that is the next step, but the decision is there. So when you go and pitch to the jury, the decision is taken the very same day, and you are notified 2 to 3 weeks later. I think those are pretty much the timings. And then you just need to go and implement that, do that. And of course, this involves having the bank involved, having some steps, but the decision is taken.
Thank you.
Thank you. We had another question.
Yes, thank you very much for the interesting insights. My name is Marvin. I'm with Swissmem, so representing 1,500 Swiss companies. Just one comment on the very well regulated. So that's what we or I often hear from our companies is that there is the hope, especially for small, medium enterprises, so that the regulations are maybe lifted a little bit in the future or for the next Framework 10 or FP10, I think it's called, program. So my question is, there are regulations, unfortunately, in the Digital Europe program concerning, I think, cybersecurity, and the other one are semiconductors. I think we're not allowed to take part there. My question is, are there also regulations in the Horizon Europe program? So I read that AI, space, and quantum, exactly, thank you, are now possible. So are there any regulations in those fields?
So you're very well informed. Thanks for those questions. So yeah, the regulations here, just for the general audience, we're talking about restrictions on Swiss participation in parts of the program. So those are in strategic technologies where the European Union wanted to protect and limit participation only to member states. So for Digital Europe program, which is more about deployment of digital technologies, there we are not participating in cybersecurity, and we're not participating in the CHIPS JU, which is developing pilot lines for new generation chips and so on. In Horizon Europe, so for both of those, we had to send in very detailed argumentation why we should be in, how we can avoid, technology and IP leakage, and how, we're aligned with the EU in a lot of ways. And Switzerland was granted an access which other associated countries were not. So there are a lot of angry other associated countries, but Switzerland is really in a privileged position. So apart from cybersecurity and chips, we have full access in Digital Europe, and within Horizon Europe, more or less complete access. So there are, for the EIC, I was worried we might be excluded from some strategic technologies. There's no exclusion. And restrictions, I think there are a couple of restrictions, 2 or 3 calls in space, but very importantly, quantum and AI, where we can fully participate.
Yeah.
So just for the sake of time, I think maybe the last question.
Yeah, just a quick question. Thomas from Custom Search, a MedTech spin-off from ETH Zurich. Are there any restrictions to participate depending on grants you already have, such as the Eurostars or InnoSwiss or any of those?
No.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, if you actually part of the Eurostar program, you even have the fast track to actually get to the...
Yeah, somehow there can be a privileged access. They're kind of resetting up this fast track access where you can skip the first step of the evaluation process. And also from InnoSwiss, we'll be talking to our colleagues after this meeting on also developing a fast track from national programs to the EIC, but that we'll announce once we get things set up. So, but that's not immediately the case. But exclusions, definitely not, but there might be a privileged access.
So, and just, wrapping up the meeting, we have some other slides on when to apply. So if you're interested, definitely come to us because it's quite short. If you want to, it's just a slide where Elisa mentioned that you have to go to step 2, which is in October. But for this, you need some time before this to prepare the full proposal. And even before this, you need to have a short proposal accepted. And they are batched, and it's good that you're taking the picture. So they are batched the first Tuesday of each month. So early June might be just around the corner. But early July, that could be a good moment for you if you want to submit the short proposal. You see what you need to prepare, which is quite decent. It usually takes 1 month to get to a full short proposal. Then you get 4 to 6 weeks feedback, so it will lead you to August. And then it gives you enough time to submit the full proposal, which is a bit larger in volume, of course, that's what you have to prepare. We have seen that some companies already, last time, they already applied, for example, in this case, in August, but then it means that you have to write the short and the full proposal in parallel because you don't have the answer on the short before actually starting the full. You have to do the two together. And then if you just want to take a picture also for this one, this is the step scale up. So on this one, it's an anytime submission. There are batches which are supposed to be every 3 months, but so far, as Otto was mentioning, it's still a very early stage instrument, early stage, very young as an instrument, so they're still fine-tuning the different aspects. And then you go to interview, which are quite similar to what Elisa shared with us. And then there is a bit more time afterwards once positive evaluation to get the due diligence and also the ownership and control checks. So on this, just to finalize, what are the research services that we can provide? Eligibility checks. Your question was really relevant on this one. Proposal-related questions. So if you want to have some advice, or are you fitting in which other challenges, for example, that Elisa mentioned, where to find relevant information. Proposal reviews. This is what we're doing together with my colleague Rita, who is also working on EIC Accelerator at eResearch Network Office. And then interview training. We're going to run some, as Otto mentioned, some companies, Swiss companies are being selected at this stage. Oops, the pitch stage. And so we're going to run interview training prepare them. And thanks to Elisa, we had also some inside views on how to best prepare to get, of course, in the end, a selection from those companies. You can stay informed. We have e-alert services and also social media. And then if you want to keep in contact with us, this is up there. And with our 3 distinguished panelists, these are their LinkedIn QR code access. So just to finish with 1 minute delay, a warm thank you for all the panelists. They've really been giving you a lot of inside view, so really take the time to digest and come to us if you have any questions. Thanks for your time. And thanks for the technician as well, and enjoy the rest of the event. Thank you very much.